Welcome to Yvonne Week. I'm going to be answering some of the questions that you guys sent in for the Q&A, and I hope you enjoy the series. Isman says, what are some crazy amounts of money that you guys have spent on a video that you did not think made sense? Okay, the first one that comes to mind is the obvious gold Xbox controller that made 0 sense to me. I feel like there's different ways to quantify what makes sense or not. There's the sheer amount of money, and then there's the, okay, well, what's the return? How many views did it get? Did it get sponsored? For that one, I don't know if I can justify it anyway.
Did we lose a lot of money on it, or?
Well, okay, the thing about gold is that it's technically an investment, right? So I think that gold is probably worth more than it originally was, but it just seemed so unnecessary. Nil Pointer says, why pharmacy? When I was in high school, I had dreams of getting into UBC, which is where I went to university. And I didn't really have any more thoughts beyond that, except that I loved sciences and I loved helping people. And I knew that I enjoyed healthcare, and whether that was parental expectations with Asian parents and all that, or just me genuinely loving science and helping people and kind of that meshing together really well. I was just doing general sciences and I wasn't really sure which field in healthcare to go into. And a couple of my friends were like, oh yeah, we're going to apply for pharmacy. And I was like, oh, pharmacy. Like I had never really thought of that before. Usually when you think of healthcare, you think of being a doctor, you think of being a nurse, or you think of like being a physiotherapist or some of those like really obvious ones. A lot of pharmacists tend to be kind of behind the scenes. But when they said that, I was like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. Like I'm the kind of person that's really meticulous and organized, and it seemed kind of like it was meant for me, honestly. So I applied and I got in. And unfortunately, my friend didn't get in. So I felt really bad about that. I feel like I kind of took her spot. But she got in the next year, so it was okay. Okay, Dawson621 says, what's one thing in your house that was the result of a sponsored video that you actually enjoy? I like the chairs in the theater room. They are amazing. I would have originally said that I like the home theater setup, like the TV and all that, but honestly, it's so difficult to use and it doesn't work half the time. But I think part of why it doesn't work half the time is because Linus is constantly changing it and doing videos, so it can be really frustrating, but the chairs always work. My MKVI0130 says, how do you deal with people with short attention spans and how do you keep them on track?
Line just turned around and came back.
Feel personally attacked right now.
I don't know. I feel like part of the beauty is not keeping Linus on track. That's how we come up with all these crazy ideas. But when I do actually need him to sit down and focus, I'll just be like, hey, like pay attention. We need to get this done. Honestly, that's pretty much it. My daughter is very much like Linus that way. And I find with her that it's a lot more difficult because at least with Linus, I can reason with him. I'm like, look, if we don't finish this now, we're going to have to do this later and it's going to interfere with the rest of our day. But with my daughter, I don't know. I'm still figuring that one out. But yeah, no, when we're sitting and working, like something that we have to work on right now is a meeting for our all hands meeting on Monday. And I know like in the past when I've done those things or when I've sat down and done budgeting with Linus, he'll get distracted with his phone or this or that. And usually what it is, I'm just like, okay, let's move on to the next thing or the next person will come back to this. And then we just kind of jump around whatever sparks his new train of thought, or will spark a new train of thought, if that makes sense. Or Cat07 says, how are the kitties? So we're actually doing a Floatplane exclusive where you get to meet all of our kitties. So you'll see that soon. Kay says, have you maintained your pharmacist qualifications? So for years, I did actually maintain my pharmacy qualifications. And part of it was because it was my own thing. It wasn't Linus Tech Tips, Linus Media Group. It was something that I could comfortably say, this is something that I did. And I held on to it even though I didn't work full time. Just at first, it was just in case I ever needed to fall back on it in case something happened. But after a while, it just became for me. And then after a while of that, I was like, okay, this doesn't make any sense anymore. I'm just paying annual dues for absolutely no reason. I theoretically have 5 years from when I let go of it to just do my continuing education and re-sign up for it again. But I think we're coming up past those 5 years now. So I have to, if I let that lapse, then I actually have to sit for the exam all over again. Chirosite says, not sure if someone has asked this yet, but how do you balance your time at work with spending time with your family? So at first, I would say that it was really, really hard, especially when the business was just starting. When I was on quote unquote my mat leaves, what I would do is I would actually bring the babies to the office. So I was not very good at finding that balance. As time has gone on, I think it's gotten a little easier and a little better. Obviously, the company has been more stable and I'm actually on leave right now, which is amazing. So I feel like I just traded that time, if that makes sense. All of that time early on that I couldn't put in, I'm trying to get that in now, which is amazing because instead of spending time doing diaper changes and all that, I actually get to, attend my son's volleyball game, which is really cool, really fun. Holoram says, do you want your husband to grow out his beard again? Yes. But he's not growing it out right now because he wants to paint his bike. And in order to wear the respirator properly, he has to have no facial hair. Ethan32 says, do you miss managing pharmacies? How did you meet Linus? Did he need a flu shot? I don't miss managing pharmacies, but I do miss working in them sometimes. Like when COVID hit and they needed pharmacists to help out, I was very tempted at that point to step in and help. But we had too much going on trying to keep the business going and keep people employed here during that time that I just didn't have the extra time. But no, I did not meet Linus in pharmacy. I met him in first year university in science. So I still remember it was after a biology test and him and a friend were standing chatting about the answer to a question. And I was like, okay, no, they totally got that wrong. And I'm just going to step in and tell them. So I did. And then the next time I saw him in that biology class, I was like, oh, okay, I think he normally sits. The next time I saw him in biology class, I just observed. I was like, oh, like I had completely forgotten that exchange, but I see him coming in. I see him sitting, in this area. So then the next biology class, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go and kind of sit in that area and I'll see if he notices me or remembers me or talks to me. And he did. He actually came and sat in that row, but he sat, I think, 2 seats away from me because he hadn't noticed me yet. But then he noticed me and then he started talking to me and then he moved over and yeah, it kind of took off from there.
So what you're saying is if you want to get attention from someone, you have to correct them and then sit by them.
Apparently. Okay, the correcting, maybe not. I take that one back. That's not the best way to go about it. Wonka0998 says, are you personally into tech at all? I am. But I feel like it's from a functional perspective. It's like, okay, I need this thing to work and I need it to work well. I feel like I said earlier, I feel like that passion for tech would have grown more if I hadn't met somebody like Linus, who was already so into it. I was just like, okay, because of the time and our split, you do the tech, I do the family or whatever business administration or operations thing that I need to do. So you focus on that, I focus on this. This is how we as a couple become a complete unit and can move forward, if that makes sense. Maxi 10022 says, will you be recognized on the street and perhaps asked for a photo? No. Yeah. And even when people recognize Linus, it's always like, oh, Linus, can I take your photo? It's very rare that people ask for me and Linus to be in a photo.
I would assume that people will you would have been recognized at least once or twice.
No, not usually. And you know what? Sometimes this is actually really difficult in our personal relationships. But I sympathize for Linus even more. Because for me, sometimes when I meet new people and I'm making connections, I'll wonder, okay, is it because Linus is internet famous or is it because they actually genuinely like me? And the tall tale sign is always when they start asking about Linus. And I'm like, okay, nope, that's it, we're done. Yeah, I sympathize with Linus because sometimes it's hard for him to tell because obviously they're already engaging and talking to him. So it can be harder to tell.